Welcome to Presentation, Ponder, Practice. Hebrews chapter 10 opens with a return to an idea the author mentioned back in chapter 8 and verse 5. A contrast between a shadow and the pattern it was modeled after. The law, speaking of the old covenant, given to Israel was a shadow of better things that were to come. The shadows are not the very form, the Hebrew writer says. All of the animal sacrifices were simply a shadow of something that was real. The better or real thing to come was the sacrifice of Christ, which the writer gets to later in Hebrews chapter 10. The shadow was not as good as the real thing because the animal sacrifices were given year after year. The law, which ordered those sacrifices, could never make the people perfect or complete or finished. Neither the law nor the sacrifices of that law were the real, better, or good things to come. Otherwise, verse 2, the worshippers would have been purified once, their consciences made clean from the guilt of their sins, and the sacrifices would have stopped. The sacrifices which were offered year by year reminded the people of their sins. When they gathered their offering and took it to the priest, they knew it was for their sins. The things said at the time of sacrificing and the things done while giving the sacrifice reminded them of their past with all of their sins. Verse 4 is a clear statement which shows why the earthly sacrifices were inferior sacrifices for the people's sins. For it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. It is impossible is emphatic. The blood of bulls nor the blood of goats could take away, that is, forgive, chapter 9 verse 22, deal with, chapter 9 verse 28, sins. Verse 11 teaches the same message, adding nothing new from the previous verses, but speaks in regard to the priest who offered the sacrifices instead of the sacrifices themselves. It says every priest stands daily in the time of the Old Covenant through the time of the author's writing, ministering and offering time after time the same sacrifices, which can never take away sins. Any priest acting in accordance with the law did the same thing. They offered the same sacrifices, doing their work every day with the same result: no forgiveness of sins. The earthly lambs were sacrificed in obedience to the law. The sacrifices could not forgive sins, so the consciences of the people were not cleansed of their guilt they had because of their sins. In fact, they were reminded of their sins rather than forgiven of their sins when they went to offer their sacrifices. Consider how you feel when you know that you have done something wrong. The law made the Israelites aware when they did something wrong. Knowing such, they felt guilty. Motivated by love for God and a guilty conscience because of their sins, they obeyed the laws commanded to pay for sin with a life. They gave the life of the animals. Yet the sacrifices did nothing to change the heart or conscience of the sinner. The blood of the animals was inferior to the blood sacrifice which the shadows were pointing to, namely the heavenly sacrifice. Feel the weight of sin. Feel the weight of a guilty conscience. Feel the weight of the sense that we humans can do nothing to make things right by ourselves. Until we accept this hopeless state, we cannot be ready for the heavenly sacrifice which the author turns to next. Until we study again, may God bless you.